It's past 1 in the morning. The town is asleep, or it should be. The storefronts are dark, the windows shuttered, the wooden boardwalks empty of foot traffic. There's no moon worth mentioning tonight. The kind of dark that isn't romantic or peaceful, the kind of dark that just waits. You're walking home. You've done this 1,000 times. You know every creak in the road, every shadow cast by every building. You know your town. That's the thing about a small town at the turn of the century. You know it the way you know your own hands. Which is why when something is wrong, you feel it before you understand it. So you stop, and there's something on the rooftop across the street. Not a shape exactly, but more like a source of light that shouldn't be there. It's a beam, focused and cold, and absolutely still for one long heartbeat before it sweeps, slowly and deliberately, across the face of the building, across the street, and toward you. It's not a lantern. Lanterns don't move that way. They don't sweep, they don't search. You take a step backward, the light stops, and it holds. You're not sure it's looking at you, but you're not sure it isn't either. And then, in a motion that simply should not be possible for anything made of flesh and bone, it crosses the street. Not walks, not flies, but crosses. One moment it's on one rooftop, and then it's on another. The beam of light vanishes. The dark rushes back in. You stand there in the middle of the empty road, and you realize your mouth has gone completely dry, and your legs are unwilling to carry you another step forward. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a very old, very quiet voice is telling you, what you just saw was not human. Welcome back to Paranormal Directive 13. I am your host, Matt, and tonight we have a special treat. Today I've got Jake and James from the Docent podcast joining us to dig into an episode that we've actually covered before. So if you've been a long-time listener of the show, you'll remember episode 1, the Van Meter Visitor, where I kind of just ghosted through it. You know, it was my first episode. I recorded on the coffee table with an Amazon mic with no editing. It was terrible. So we're going to do it the right way, and we have some guests to help us along the way. So Jake, James, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us. We're super excited to be on here, Matt.
Yeah, hi. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, glad
Me and my Amazon mic.
I say that, but the only reason I have a better mic is because I got one for Christmas from a relative. So I haven't even bought myself a new one. I just got lucky. But yeah, I used to record my show on the coffee table in my living room. I still record it on the coffee table most times, and then I didn't know how to edit, anything like that. So, guys, the Van Meter Visitor. 5 nights, multiple witnesses, one abandoned coal mine, and something that walked through a firing squad like it wasn't even there. Now, James, the resident skeptic in the room, have you ever heard of the Van Meter Visitor?
I have not. This is new to me.
This is new to you. And Jake, you are a big fan.
Love the Van Meter Visitor.
Awesome.
Big believer, and I think this case is a fantastic choice for our resident skeptic here.
Awesome. Perfect. So let's get into Van Meter.
AI is transforming customer service. It's real and it works. And with Finn, we've built the #1 AI agent for customer service. We're seeing lots of cases where it's solving up to 90% of real queries for real businesses. This includes the real-world complex stuff like issuing a refund or cancelling an order. And we also see it when Finn goes up against competitors. It's top of all the performance benchmarks, top of the G2 leaderboard, and if you're not happy, we'll refund you up to $1 million, which I think says it all. Check it out for yourself at fin.ai.
Now, before I get further into what actually happened, I want you to understand where this happened, because the setting is very important to what went on here. And I mean that literally. It's not a rhetorical device. If you don't understand the physical reality of Van Meter in 1903, the events of the next 5 nights don't really land the way that they should. So Van Meter, Iowa, the population is roughly 400 in 1903. Estimates 400 to 1,000 people. It's founded in 1869 by Dutch settlers, and it was built on 2 things, coal and brick. There is an active brickyard just outside of town, and the surrounding hills are honeycombed with coal mining operations. Some are active, some are already abandoned by this point. There's tunnels going down into the earth and branching off into the dark in ways that nobody actually fully mapped. There is a bank, there is a hardware store, there's a doctor's office. It's not really backwoods. It's a coal town, but it's not a backwoods coal town.
Yeah.
It's the kind of place where everyone knows each other's names and their businesses, but they are professional. And it's where your reputation is one of your only real assets that you have. And the nights in Van Meter in 1903 are dark in a way that almost doesn't exist anymore. Now, you guys are in British Columbia, correct?
Yes, we are. Yeah.
So you probably get a lot darker than I do in Western New York.
Yeah. I was also raised in the rural part of British Columbia.
Okay.
So I get it.
So you're probably a little more familiar with that kind of dark.
Oh yeah.
But a lot of people aren't. A lot of people, when they think of dark, they think of city dark. Where, yes, some areas are dark and you can still kind of figure out what you're doing. So this is dark in a way that the glow off of buildings and streetlights and the blue wash and the orange smear on the city on the underside of clouds is not there. In Van Meter in 1903, when the sun went down, you lit your kerosene lamp or you sat in the dark. And that was your choice. Outside at 1 a.m. on the main street of town with no moon, your visibility was maybe 15 feet in either direction on a good night. On a cloudy night, it was even less. The darkness wasn't a backdrop, it was a presence, and it filled the space of Van Meter. And in that world, that specific particular world of real darkness and kerosene lamps and knowing everyone in town, U.G. Griffith stepped outside and looked up. Now, U.G. Griffith is a credible man by every measure available to us. He holds a position of trust in the community. He's not described anywhere in the contemporary accounts as impulsive, as a drinker, as someone prone to exaggeration. He is, by 1903 small-town Iowa standards, the last person you'd expect to be standing in the street staring at a rooftop with his mouth open. But there he is. He's walking home. The time is approximately 1 a.m. It's late enough that any reasonable explanation for the light he sees should involve someone being where they have no business being. And what he sees is not a lantern left burning. What he sees is a focused, steady, brilliant white beam emanating from a shape on the rooftop. And then that shape, whatever it is, moves. And it moves pretty effortlessly from roof to roof, across a gap that a person couldn't clear without a running start and a prayer. The thing barely pauses, it goes, and then it's somewhere else. And then the beam of light goes with it. And then it's gone, into the dark, and Griffith is standing there alone, and the silence comes back, and the night is exactly the same way it was 2 minutes ago. Except that it isn't, really. That first night ends without further incident. Griffith tells people in the morning, and they're skeptical, the way any people in a community would be skeptical. He's a well-regarded man. You're not going to call him a liar to his face. But a light on a rooftop at 1 a.m. has a lot of possible explanations before it needs to have an impossible one. Maybe it was a lamp. Maybe it was a reflection off a wet shingle. Maybe Griffith was tired. The brain does strange things to tired eyes in the dark. Now, the next night would make that conversation seem very, very quaint, to put it lightly. So, James, before we get further, we have night one. We have U.G. Griffith. And his job, he's an implement dealer. So what he does, he sells farm equipment to the local farms. Sees this weird light on the rooftop. What are your initial thoughts right now?
I mean, kind of the same thing you mentioned there. It could be any number of things before who knows what, right? Because we don't know what yet. It's hard to say. Something reflective catching the light somewhere, and
the way it's kind of described, it sounds almost like a focused light, like almost like a beam of light. And from, kerosene lamps and stuff back then, they didn't have that kind of focus.
Right.
The light
but if it was foggy or something, or there was a light mist, then a beam from a whole spot in the lamp could
So
project out.
keep in mind what we're describing with this light.
Yeah.
So 1903, electric light exists, but Iowa doesn't, like a small town in Iowa doesn't have electric lamps everywhere.
Yeah.
A kerosene lantern or a miner's helmet light. One, it gives more of a yellowish kind of hue to it. Two, we're describing a light that's like the high beams of an HID vehicle headlight. So like when you're driving at night and you see those cars that are coming at you that blind you with that bright
Yeah.
white light, that's the kind of light he's seeing. So it's not like a diffused light into the fog. It is a beam of white light. So keep that in mind when you're thinking lantern.
That'd probably be quite
something
the
like
sight to see in 1903.
Right. Now, night 2, September 30th, 1903. Dr. Fred Alcott is the town physician. He lives and works in the same building. His office is on the ground floor, and his sleeping quarters is upstairs. A doctor in a small town in 1903 is not just a medical professional. He's one of the few people in that community whose entire social function depends on being believed. Patients trust him with their bodies. Neighbors trust him with their diagnoses. His word is, in a very real sense, his practice. A man in that position does not say something that he does not believe. Now, he is asleep. It's 1:30 in the morning, and I'm going to walk you through Dr. Fred Alcott's night on September 30th. The light wakes him up. Not a sound, not a crash downstairs, not a knock at the door from someone with a medical emergency, but a light, a moving, sweeping light that finds his face through his eyelids and pulls him up from sleep. And before we even get into what he sees when he opens his eyes, stop there for a second. Think about what it takes to wake a person up with light. In a world without electricity, where the ambient nighttime illumination in a room is zero, for a light to wake him up, it would have to be moving or something. It would have to be very bright. This was not a neighbor's candle in the window. This was something that cut through the darkness.
Think National Lampoon's Vacation Christmas movie with the Christmas lights.
The first thing coming to mind here is the Flatwoods Monster.
Yeah,
The beams of light coming from its eyes.
Lights are just always eerie in these cases.
they are. They are. So even through his closed eyelids, he could feel it sweep left, then right. He felt it drop to the floor and climb back up. His mind, half assembled in the seconds after waking, was reaching for a rational explanation. He was thinking a lantern in the street or a torch in the alley. Someone out earlier than they should be, or holding a lamp at a weird angle. And he opened his eyes, and the explanation dissolved instantly. The light wasn't coming through the window. The light was inside his room. His room was not large. It was a space he knew by heart. The bed, the washstand, the wardrobe, and the small writing table by the window where he often worked late when a medical case proved pretty complicated. He had dressed here in near darkness hundreds of times, navigating the floorboards by memory. There was nowhere in this room where a light source of such intensity could be hidden. Yet there it was. A beam, directed and piercing, tracked across his ceiling, down to the floor, and back up again. He followed it, his gaze drawn to the source by the same primal instinct that pulls any creature toward light in the dark. His first response was not fear, though later he did find that a little bit surprising. Instead, he felt a confusion so total that fear couldn't find its fitting. Fear required recognition. It required the brain to categorize a threat. But his brain, trained in anatomy, in the documented architecture of living things, and the cataloged range of biology, had no category for this. It was tall. The ceiling of his room sat just over 8 feet, and the top of the creature nearly brushed it. Its proportions were wrong in a way that he couldn't immediately articulate. There were limbs arranged roughly like a biped, but the ratios were not human. The angles were not human. The way it held itself was unlike any large animal he had ever treated or studied in a medical text. And then, There were the wings.
Get ready.
Okay.
I was looking for that reaction.
Huh?
I saw the eyebrows above the pit vipers. They were folded tight against its body, like a roosting bird drawing itself in against the cold. But even compressed, they were vast, and their scale defying the dimensions of the room. There was a leathery membrane caught by the light from the horn, which he now realized was the source of the light. A single blunt projection extended from the center of the thing's forehead, emitting a clean, unwavering beam. The membrane of the wings drew back a texture that was neither feather or fur, and it's not any surface his hands had ever touched. Now, the creature had not moved. Since he had opened his eyes, it had remained utterly, unnervingly still. The beam from its horn continued its slow, mechanical sweep. Ceiling, wall, floor, wall, ceiling. It stood without tremor, without the minute shifts in weight that every living thing makes just to maintain its balance. In the ringing absence of an explanation, his right hand moved. It wasn't really a conscious decision. His hand moved the way hands do when the body has reached a conclusion and the mind is still processing it. His fingers found the familiar weight of his revolver on the nightstand, a large caliber weapon that he kept loaded for 11 years. It was a professional habit. Late-night house calls in rural Iowa were occasionally complicated. The cold grip grounded him. It pulled him back into his body, into the specific terrifying present. The creature's beam continued its sweep, and he raised the revolver. And he fired. The noise hit him like a physical blow. The gunshot was sharp and explosive, the concussive pressure of a large caliber round filling the enclosed space. The flash vanished before he could track it, replaced by the sharp, acid scent of black powder. His ears began to ring with a high, clean tone that drowned out the world. The creature did not react. It didn't flinch, it didn't stumble, it didn't even turn towards the sound. The beam just continued its rhythmic sweep, as though he had fired into empty air. He fired again, and then again. 3 shots, 4 shots, 5 shots. 5 rounds. He had put 5 rounds into a target standing 8 feet away in a room with no margin for error. At that range, with that caliber, a man dies, a horse dies. Anything made of tissue and bone, anything that followed the rules of biology he had spent his life learning, should have gone down. The creature remained standing, and the beam continued to move. In the aftermath of the shots, amidst the smoke and the sulfurous mineral smell that trailed the entity like a signature, it was the manner of his departure that haunted him the most. It did not run, it did not flee in a panic like a cornered animal. It showed no urgency, no fear, no survival instinct. It simply decided it wanted to go. The wings unfolded. Even as compressed as they had been, the motion filled the room, displacing the air with a pressure change he could feel within himself. It moved toward the window with a calm precision, like a guest who had decided the encounter was just done. It had seen what it came to see. The beam of light swept once more across the ceiling, and then it was gone. He sat up in his bed, in the absolute dark, clutching an empty revolver. The room smelled of burnt powder and something ancient. Somewhere out in the black Iowa night, the thing he had shot 5 times at point-blank range was moving away with total serenity. He sat there for a long time. And in the morning, he decided he would tell people. He just didn't know if they were going to believe him.
So,
Wow.
yeah. And this is one of like the most like probably educated, smart guys in the entire town.
Yes,
And he's claiming this.
a doctor.
Yeah.
Like yeah.
You know, and he's claiming this thing. It was in his room, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, there's some accounts of like exactly where it was in his house. It kind of vary, with different stories, but essentially, yes, it was there right in front of him in the building.
I've heard it so that it's in its room. I've also heard it that he had like almost like a deck or porch just outside his room, and it was
Yeah.
just at the window, and he shot through the window as well. I've heard that as well.
Mm-hmm.
you're dealing with a 120-something-year-old story. It's,
Right.
different people are going to say different things, but the main thing of the story is that this guy, who was one of the smartest guys in the town,
Mhm.
shot 5 rounds into something that wasn't affected.
Correct.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, the people named in this story are real people documented in census data, actually existed. So
Yeah.
these aren't made up names, stuff like that. These are real people in Iowa in 1903.
Right.
Yeah, like, lots of newspapers, obviously, at the time would just make up names and throw them in a paper with a made-up
Mhm.
story just to sell papers, and, like, the reason this one stands out is because we can actually track back that these people existed. So,
Right.
yeah.
This creature, you said it was like still as a statue, basically. That
Mhm.
that beam moving around, was its head moving, or was the beam just moving on its own from his head?
From what I gather, like he's got the horn and the
Yeah.
beam just kind of rotates around from it. Like kind of
Right.
like a
Like a lighthouse?
kind of, yeah, but it can
Yeah.
go up and down.
Yeah.
Like on a 360 pivot, just connected to the horn. So like it's just like articulated on top of the horn. So he
Yeah.
didn't have to move his head around to angle the beam.
Mhm.
Huh.
Yeah. It's it's really obscure.
It is.
Uh,
I take it there weren't bullet holes in the wall after it left?
Nope. Nope. Nothing that was ever reported. Nothing that was
Yeah.
ever confirmed or no one there's never any mention of bullet holes in the wall.
Yeah,
You
so
know,
presumably he hit whatever that thing
correct.
was.
Correct. I
yeah.
mean, think about I believe it was a 380 revolver you had
Yeah.
on the other side of your bedroom, standing in front, even in the dark, you're gonna you might miss one or two. You shouldn't, but you might.
Yeah.
You're gonna hit some of them at least. And he fired 5 shots at point blank range into this thing. So unless it was a stormtrooper, he should have hit something.
Right, yes. Huh.
Another aspect how this was definitely in the United States, James, is because if it was where we are from, we would just politely ask it to leave, and if it didn't, we would be like, "Okay, well,
Hey,
just don't take all the cream from my coffee,
Yeah.
and we'll be fine."
My
You
car
know?
keys are already at the front door, please don't hurt me.
can you just turn the light off when you leave?
Yeah.
Yep, that's what we do.
Mm, I mean, yeah. I mean, it's
Please don't
America.
s please don't stub your toe on the way out and sue me.
America's like, where's my other gun? I gotta.
Yeah, reloading is just grabbing the other gun.
It's basically America in a nutshell. So, what I keep coming back to with Dr. Alcott, he did not hide this story. He didn't quietly convince himself it was a nightmare. He didn't decide that the professional cost was too high to let the thing go unreported. The next morning, he told people voluntarily. Now, like we just said, this is a doctor. This is a man whose profession and reputation depended on being taken seriously. And he told his neighbors, he told everyone that he could come in contact with what he saw that night. That he stood there, unloaded his revolver into it, and it simply just turned and walked away when it wanted to. It makes me, he's not going to do that if he didn't believe genuinely what he saw. Now, I want to raise the idea here quickly of sleep paralysis.
That was the first thing that came to my mind.
Yeah.
Now, it gets brought up a lot. The thing with sleep paralysis with this case is sleep paralysis, you cannot move, or you can only move very slightly. He vividly grabbed his gun, took it, fired, shot, and then saw what happened and moved. Like he was moving. He was not
Yeah.
paralyzed in any way. So to me, it kind of rules that out a little bit.
And
Maybe not entirely, but it throws a lot of water on that fire of sleep paralysis, I think.
And also, you could check the gun, like, if it was fired.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
enough to show
Yep.
that, something was shot, you know?
Because chances are, if you're going to keep a revolver on your nightstand, you're not going to keep it there unloaded.
No.
I would assume. Act 3, the town unravels. Through October 1st and October 2nd, 1903. By October 1st, the professional spine of Van Meter is starting to crack. The doctor has reported it. Griffith has reported it. And the town, 400 people who know each other, who share a church and a hardware store and a newspaper and a set of social norms about what serious, respectable people say publicly, is trying to hold itself together around an experience it has no framework for. The streets feel different during the day now. People are talking, but not the way they normally talk about something strange. They're a little quieter. They're watching the horizon more than they usually do. Businesses that close at 5 are closing at 4. Women are calling their children inside earlier. And the men, the professional men, the ones who are supposed to have explanations for things, whose entire social function is to be steady when the community is unsteady, they're checking their guns in ways they wouldn't normally check them. By night 3, Peter Dunn is the cashier at the local bank. And Peter has decided that he's kind of had enough of all the bullshit. That evening on night 3, he's not at the bank for business. He's there because he made a decision that the bank needed to be guarded. The town's professional class is mobilizing. They don't know what they're guarding against exactly. They don't know what they'd do if they encountered it, but they've decided that armed presence is better than nothing.
It's funny how not much has changed 100 years later. There's a monster ravaging our town. Oh no, the economy. Guard the bank.
It's true. It's true. It reminds me so much of the shit with Epstein when Pam Bondi was still in office, and they're
The
like,
Dow.
"You put that down, bro. I don't give a fuck about the Dow." So, Peter Dunn, the local banker, decided he was going to guard the bank because we got to protect the money. Now, a lot of these guys are thinking what's going on is possibly burglars or bandits, whatever you want to describe them as, sneaking around with lanterns and all that. That's a lot of people's first thought of what is going on at the town at nighttime. The problem is nothing's gone missing, and you can't shoot a bandit or burglar 5 times with a 380 and have them walk away.
Good point.
So, but that's where we're at. So Peter Dunn, and they still think it might be someone trying to steal something. So he's guarding the bank. Dunn is alone in the darkened bank. He's armed and he's alert in that specific way a person is alert when they're doing something they know is slightly absurd, but they can't stop themselves from doing it because not doing it feels kind of worse. He has a view of the front windows and he's not even sure what he's waiting for. And then he hears a noise, and the newspaper describes it as strangling or gurgling. And there are news articles about this. So if you want to take a minute, I'm going to read you a news article. So this is an actual newspaper from the St. Paul Globe. Des Moines, Iowa, October 10th. The town of Van Meter, containing 1,000 persons, is terribly wrought up by what is described as a horrible monster. Every man, woman, and child in the town is in a state of terror, and fully half of them fail to close their eyes in slumber except in broad daylight. I love the journalism from the 1900s.
Very flowery.
Right. The monster put in its appearance Monday night. Eugene Griffith, an implement dealer, drove into town at 1 a.m. and saw what seemed to be an electric searchlight on Maher and Griggs' store. While he gazed, it sailed across to another building and then disappeared. His story was not believed next day, but the following night, Dr. Alcott, who sleeps in his office on the principal street, was awakened by a bright light shining in his face. Now, they claimed he grabbed a shotgun. So it seems a little exaggerated of the story, but that was journalism in the 1900s. He grabbed a shotgun and ran outside of the building where he saw a monster, half human, half beast, with great bat-like wings. Dazzling light that fairly blinded him came from a blunt, horn-like protuberance in the middle of the animal's forehead and gave off a stupefying odor that almost overcame him. The doctor discharged his weapon and fled into his office, barring doors and windows, and remained there in abject terror until morning. Peter Dunn, cashier of the only bank in town, fearing that bank robbers loaded with a repeating shotgun with shells filled with buckshot and prepared to guard his funds the next night. So this was reported in the papers.
Yeah.
This is, there is actual tangible proof that this was reported by the people in the town. Now, again, the yellow journalism of the 1900s, things get exaggerated, things get embellished, they want to sell papers.
For sure,
Yeah.
but
So,
baseline, something happened.
yeah, so saying, oh, Alcott grabbed his revolver and shot it in his bedroom is not as exciting as saying he chased it outside with a shotgun. But
Mhm.
again, like you said, something happened.
And from everything I've seen about Van Meter, I haven't found anything where the people mentioned in the story have said none of this happened or they're making anything up, sort of thing.
Correct. Now, there is a caveat to that I'm going to mention when we get to the end, but I don't think that it actually is what people claim it to be. So
Right.
we'll discuss that. Dunn hears what the newspaper describes the sound as strangling or gurgling, which is a notable pair of words because they're kind of different directions. A gurgle is more liquid, whereas strangle is more mechanical and like scratchy. I've seen reports of saying it sounded like chains being dragged across metal. So like that kind of weird sound. It comes from outside and it's close, very close to the building. And then the light hits him through the window. The same beam Griffith saw, the same beam that swept across Alcott's bedroom ceiling. Dunn doesn't hesitate the way Alcott hesitated. Maybe because he's already heard the stories, maybe because he's already has a weapon in his hand and a purpose in mind. He fires his shotgun at the silhouette in the window. The glass shatters, but the creature does not. And in the morning, they find the tracks. 3 toed impressions in the mud outside of the bank. They are deep, with the kind of depth you get from something that's heavy, something that puts weight down into the soft earth. They're not broad, flat prints of a bird wading. They are purposeful, spaced, and angled in a way that suggests upright locomotion. Multiple people see them. Peter Dunn, according to later accounts, made a plaster cast of the footprints. Now, it's a plaster cast that no one has seen since. It's not lost with an asterisk, it's just gone. 122 years, it's gone. There are replica tracks at the Van Meter Festival that you can see that are reconstructed through descriptions. They're not preserved from 1903. So they're not the actual evidence. But I would like to show you what they claim is what the footprints look like. So I have a picture of the ones they show at the festival. So right here, you see it?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
3 toes right there. 1, 2, 3. It's a 3-toed footprint. You have the heels here, some drawings and all that. Okay.
Right.
So this is not the actual cast. That is a replica cast made from descriptions that have occurred over time.
Right.
So no one's really sure what happened to the originals. October 2nd. By the 4th night, it wasn't just 1 or 2 witnesses anymore. Sidney Gregg also encountered the creature, and his description is one of the most visually specific we have from the entire case. He sees it perched on a telephone pole. Not flying and not moving, but just perched up there. It's kind of like a normal large bird of prey would perch up on a pole. It's settled, it's stable, its weight is balanced, it's fully in control of what it's doing. When it descends from the pole, Greg says it comes down after the manner of a parrot. And that's a very specific phrase. It's essentially like it's grabbing the pole with a beak and climbing down with its feet, and then grabbing it a bit again and climbing down.
Right.
The beak-like face, the massive wings, partially extended for balance as it descends. And when it reaches the ground, it has great kangaroo-like hops, an upright, bouncing locomotion, covering ground in bounds that each cover more distance than they should. And then Greg fires at it too, because it's America and that's what we do. We
Damn
shoot
right.
shit when we see it.
Shoot first, regret later.
Yeah, exactly. And again, he reports the same thing as everyone else. Nothing happens when he shoots it.
I was gonna say just the part that bothers me. We're positive that no one missed a single shot. We have some where guys are shooting it like point blank and
Mhm.
nothing's happening. Of course, you can question some accuracy. Like we've had when me and James did the Loveland Frogman, the cops all said they were sure they shot the Frogman, but then you find no blood, no nothing at the area. So we're like, maybe you didn't shoot the the Frogman. Have has anyone found anything that's like anything that shows that they actually hit this thing, or did anyone find anything that disputes whether they hit this thing?
There's nothing, and I have a tidbit to add with that later on when we get to the next part of the story. But there's nothing to show that they did hit it, but there's also nothing to show that they missed. There's not bullet, like James was saying earlier, bullet holes in the walls and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not
Neighbors
finding
complaining.
that. Yeah.
It's so strange.
And a lot of these guys, I want to say it was Sidney Gregg, though this last guy was essentially like a marksman shooter at the time. A
Mhm.
lot of these guys were really good shots. They were hunters. They knew how to shoot, and they didn't have bad aim. They weren't firing wildly, just some Joe Schmo with a rifle.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
Now we get into O.V. White, who is the hardware store owner. And he has his own encounter the same night as Sidney Gregg. And he fires at the creature at close range, and he is certain that he has a target, and he fires. And when he does, the air fills with this smell. Every account of this moment fully agrees. It's a sulfur, rotten egg smell at an industrial scale. Something that combines the biological with the chemical in a way that crosses some weird threshold of sensory tolerance. It's thick enough that it spreads across a city block, and people are vomiting in the city over the smell. Many people are noticing the smell. People are throwing up. Like, it is an obtuse smell in the city. And O.V. White, who was near the creature when it produced the smell, lost consciousness. He was incapacitated not by any physical blow, but by the sheer smell that the creature released. It was either released when it felt threatened or when it decided to leave. They're not really sure which of the two it was, but the effect of it was the same either way.
Right. Yeah. It's
Hmm.
crazy that other people also like smelled that as well, sort of thing. So it's like it's not just the one guy shooting. Other times throughout this case, it's been one guy shoots it and then it goes away. This time we have a
Right.
group of people, which is good to see.
Yep.
Clearly, it's some demon from hell that found its way into Iowa there.
Keep that phrase in mind.
I was gonna say,
So by the end of October 2nd, Van Meter is in what the newspaper calls a state of terror, like we just read. The reporter means it literally. Businesses are closing early, no one's going out after dark unless they have to, children are kept inside, there's armed men keeping watches. This is not a hysterical community by any regard. This is a community that's run out of conventional options and they know it. So, J.L. Platt is the foreman at the local brickyard, and he organizes men and materials for a living. That's what he does. He's practical, results-oriented, experienced with the challenge of moving groups of people toward a goal under pressure. He doesn't panic easily. He is, in the language of this era, a steadying presence. And by October 3rd, he's made a decision. The town has made a decision. Whatever is going on in Van Meter is not going to continue. So, what they do, they form a posse of men in Van Meter. They wake up in the middle of the night, they dress in the dark, they try not to wake anyone up, and they grab their rifles, their shotguns, whatever they have, and they step out into an October pre-dawn in central Iowa, where the air is cold enough that you can see your breath, and the sky is that weird deep blue-black of the hour right before the sun comes up. And they
gotta love
don't-
an American monster hunt.
Oh, yeah. The account suggests approximately 200 armed citizens assembled that night. That is roughly half to a fifth of the residents, depending on the official population at the time. Anywhere from 400 to 1,000. So A lot of fucking people in the town decided we're going to do this. Their goal is to track it, find it, and end it. And the evidence of where they wanted to go was clear enough. The creature had been seen moving toward the old coal mine near the brickyard on more than one occasion. If it had a location in Van Meter, a home, a base, an entry point, whatever, the evidence pointed to this mine. Now, their approach is slower than it probably needs to be physically, but they're kind of going through the motions that your body does, when it's nervous about something. Their lanterns are turned down as low as they'll go without extinguishing, and they spread out instinctively, the way that a group of people who've spent time hunting know how to spread out. They're not bunched together, they're not a single target. And they form a loose arc in front of the mine shaft entrance, and they stop and they wait. The silence before the encounter has this particular quality to it. They notice things that you wouldn't normally notice. They feel the cold in their hands. They feel where the rifle stock is pressed against their palm. The sound of their own breathing, which feels like they're breathing too loud. They almost start feeling like, hey, am I, kind of hyperventilating a little bit? What's going on? The distant, persistent sound of the river can be heard in the background. And the sky is beginning to change at the eastern side. It's not light yet, but the deep black is beginning to soften a little bit. And something moves in the shaft. And there's not one of them, but there's two of them. They rise from the mine shaft into the early morning air, the light from their horns, both horns, because there are now two of them. One large and one smaller, cuts up through the pre-dawn dark in parallel beams. The newspaper's primary account, written by correspondent Harry H. Phillips for the Des Moines Daily News, describes the sound they make as though Satan and a regiment of imps were coming forth for battle. So, James, you were spot on with your description earlier.
You got it, buddy. Plus the sulfur smell, you're on it.
Yeah, that and the bat wings. I don't know how I did it.
Do we have a picture for James?
I do. I have a drawing.
Perfect.
I love drawings.
So,
It's your favorite.
so this is what they saw coming out of the mine. Are you ready for your mind to be blown, James?
Oh, I'm ready.
Boom. Take a look at that.
It's like a dinosaur with a laser beam strapped to, or on a freaking laser beam on his forehead.
Yeah. It's like a pterodactyl, pteranodon,
yeah.
shooting a fucking hyper beam out of his forehead.
Yeah.
That's not what I was expecting, but
And
I like it.
see, it kind of reminds me of, I'm trying to remember the exact name. I might be messing it up, but the ropin in Philippines lore, the pterodactyl, or is that the ahul?
I am not familiar with that one.
There's another pterodactyl or pteranodon type cryptid in the Philippines, and it also is described as like a glowing thing. But its glow is like on its tail.
Let's look it up. We have technology.
Let's do it.
How good are you at multitasking? How does this compare to the Thunderbird?
Similar, but it's not quite the same. It's close. There's a lot of descriptions of ancient Thunderbirds that are very like pterodactyl like, but then there's a lot of more symbolic kind of large. I don't know if you ever played the game Ark, but like an Argentavis, just a giant bird.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't put these two in the same category myself, but I could see how someone would. This one does. Yeah. It's not quite big enough for me to be considered Thunderbird.
Yeah.
Right. It's closer to man size.
I found the cryptid in the Philippines. It's called the ropin.
The ropin.
It's like a pterodactyl type cryptid or pteranodon type cryptid, but it's got like a iridescent like belly and like tail that comes off of it. Compare it to Van Meter's, that's another pteranodon type creature that has some sort of iridescence or glow or light on it.
Yeah. So
demon flyer.
And the thing is that like I just find it strange that since obviously prehistoric animals, we can't prove if they had any like iridescent glowing aspects to their physically, but I think it's strange that there's at least a couple cryptids that have that same sort of description of some
Yeah.
sort of glow. I'm just curious what the evolutionary reason it would be for them to glow, because prey would be able to see them, or with Van Meter, like why would they be shining a light down for like an evolutionary reason?
Now, I have a theory on that.
Okay,
So keep that in mind. Well, I
all
have
right.
a
Sorry,
theory on that one.
don't
No,
mean to
you're
go too far
good.
ahead.
Yeah. So I have a theory on the light. So
Okay,
we'll dive into that.
awesome.
Now, we have one larger, one smaller. Now, whether it's a parent and a child, two members of a group, just one's bigger than the other, not really sure, but they come up together and they face this group of men together. Now, this is not one frightened man with a revolver in a dark bedroom. This is not a lone banker firing through his window. This is a coordinated volley from multiple armed men at close range in the early morning light, with rifles and shotguns and clear sight lines to their targets. The Des Moines Register's account referenced the firepower in terms of the Spanish-American War. They said they had enough to sink the Spanish fleet. So they are unloading on these fucking creatures.
I'm picturing Predator.
Yeah. So what they're saying is, we delivered a bunch of fucking bullets to these things. We shot them with everything that we had. And the creatures didn't go down. They didn't scatter. They didn't bleed. They didn't show any response that a living thing shows when struck. They didn't even have an involuntary flinch, not even the smallest physical concession to the impact of being shot by hundreds of rounds. Nothing. The two beams of light continued sweeping, and amid the noise and the smoke and that smell, the two creatures turned and they descended slowly and calmly back into the mine shaft. And they didn't retreat. It wasn't like they were running away. Okay, they were just done. They're like, okay, this was cool, and we're gonna head back now. So the group of men stood at the mine entrance in the light, holding guns that did nothing, breathing this air that smelled like gunpowder and smoke. And from somewhere deep inside the mine, they heard a sound. And the accounts go for a couple different descriptions of a cackling or a screaming. It's another description of that Satan and his imps coming from the mine. And then there was nothing, just silence. The two creatures did not come back out of the mine. And they decided, fuck that, we're going to seal the mine up.
Hell yeah.
They took planks and heavy stones and they covered the entrance with hours of physical work by the men. They sealed away the mine permanently. And after October 3rd, 1903, the Van Meter visitor was never reported again. Not once. Not in that town, not in that county. The encounters began September 29th. They ended October 3rd, and then nothing. So, whatever conclusion you want to make from that, of them boarding up this mine and they never saw them again, we don't know. That is the story, and I'm gonna recap it real quick for you. Across 5 nights and multiple witnesses who did not coordinate their reports in advance, the descriptions cluster around a remarkably consistent core. An 8-foot-tall, humanoid in general shape, upright and bipedal, had massive bat-like wings, described consistently as smooth and leathery, not feathered, a wingspan that witnesses estimated between 12 and 30 feet, which is a pretty wide range, but it's still consistent that it was very large. Ground movement described as hopping like a kangaroo, suggesting powerful hind legs capable of sudden high-velocity launches. And from the head, a single protruding structure, a blunt horn, from which came the focused beam of light that every single witness referenced. The creature was apparently impervious to bullets. There was multiple rounds fired by multiple shooters on multiple nights at ranges where misses should have been minimal, and they produced no apparent effect. No blood, no cry of pain, no wound, and it produced a sulfuric odor, described as rotten eggs but much more intense. And it produced high-pitched, cackling, screaming sounds compared to a banshee. Peter Dunn reportedly made a plaster cast of the three-toed footprints left outside the bank, and that cast doesn't exist anymore. Or if it does, no one knows where it is. The immunity to gunfire deserves some serious attention, because it's either the most important fact of this case or it could be the most important embellishment. We have a physician firing 5 large caliber revolver rounds at point blank range. We have a cashier firing a shotgun through his window. We have a hardware merchant firing at a creature on a telephone pole. And a 200-person posse firing what contemporary press compared to the destruction of a naval fleet at a target only yards away, and in the entrance of a mine shaft. In all cases, the creature appeared uninjured. So, that is a case in a nutshell. We saw this thing, multiple people saw it, described the same thing, fired at it over and over, nothing happened. James, do you want to lay out any of your thoughts before we dive into a couple theories of what it could be?
Sure.
Tell us we're nuts, James.
I mean, it's a very interesting story. It's hard to really know what to think because it's really out there. Like having that many people fire upon something and it being just completely unaffected. It's strange, right? I have seen in shows multiple times. I can't think of a specific one off the top of my head, but it's a trope I've heard a couple times. Like mine shafts having some sort of gateway or portal to hell or the underworld or something like that. Makes me think of that. Yeah, I don't really know what to think. It's weird having something that could like leave. It almost seems like it doesn't interact really with the physical world, but then it goes and leaves footprints and stuff.
Right.
It's I don't know. It's
Yeah.
pretty different than anything we've gone over so far, Jake. I think.
It is strange. If it was one person who said, "Oh, I unloaded a whole clip on this thing and it didn't even budge," you could just say that guy just missed every shot. But because we have several very reliable, real witnesses who encountered this thing, shot this thing, and nothing happened, and then at the end had an estimated 50% of the town shoot at this thing, and still nothing happened, and also all of the descriptions being so spot on, and also with the only discrepancy really with the description of the creature is the wingspan. But I think that's because most of the witnesses saw this creature with its wings folded and at night. So with a
Yep.
blinding light in their face. So, they were probably mostly judging by the size of the actual creature what the wingspan could be. Other than that, the descriptions are all very, very similar.
Mhm.
So I think there's a lot of credence and strong reasons why this could be genuine and a real
Mm.
thing that happened.
That's always the thing I hate most is when there's just a ton of eyewitness testimony and not much else. It's like, gotta take a bunch of people's words for it.
And keep in mind, too, with the wingspan description, people are really bad at judging size scale
Yeah.
of things in the air.
Yeah.
So when it's standing in your bedroom, you know your ceiling's 8 feet and you know what's right there, so you can guess the height. But when it flies away and you see the wings spread out in the air, it's really hard for people to reference that to how big those wingspans really are. With the Thunderbird, for instance, a lot of people were able to measure it just because they saw that it was the same width as, say, a road or a building or whatever. But again, even the Thunderbird, the wingspan ranges were pretty large. So just people are really bad at realizing how big things are when they're in the air.
And embellishment's pretty easy when you're retelling stories
yeah.
and stuff like that, especially over 122 years.
Yep.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's like
Caught
a
a fish and it was this big.
Yeah. Yeah. So keep that in mind with that kind of description. Explanations. First explanation is that the whole thing is a hoax. And this is one of the ones that skeptics point to the most. And it comes from 1903 itself. 2 days after the Des Moines Daily News published the original account, which is October 6th, the Des Moines Daily Capital ran a rebuttal. Now, keep in mind, back then, newspapers competed all the time and were always trying to undermine everybody else. It called the whole thing pure fabrication and said that the town was justly indignant at being associated with it. The reporter on the original story was a local correspondent named Harry H. Phillips. A slow news week, a bored local stringer, and a directory of respectable local names to borrow without verification. It's a recipe for an embellished or an entirely invented account. But the problem with that is that he names these people by name in this newspaper article. U.G. Griffith, Fred Elcott, Peter Dunn, Sidney Gregg, O.V. White, J.L. Platt. He gives their professions. Their locations in the town are specified. These are identified, locatable members of a 400-person community who could walk to the newspaper office and issue a denial. The October 6th rebuttal says locals were indignant, but it doesn't include any of the named witnesses specifically denying their accounts. And that's odd. If Phillips invented these accounts and the men he named had every social and professional incentive to publicly correct the record. And there was silence from everyone named in this article. So for me, I think the hoax side is a competing newspaper trying to just undermine the story and get readers to them. Because, like you said, all these people, your reputation is your life. In 1903. If they were making this up about what you reported, at least one of them would have gone to correct the record.
And also, back then, like, newspapers were a lot bigger deal. Like, everyone read the newspaper. I mean, even up until like 20 years ago, like, everyone read the newspaper to get all their information. So, it's not like they would miss these things. People wouldn't read these strange accounts that happened and see their name. They could just miss it. Like,
Right.
these people would read these papers and see their name in it, and they didn't rebuttal saying this didn't happen. So,
Yeah, it's not like, hey, you were mentioned in this one random TikTok I saw the other day.
yeah, it's
And
like,
whatever, who fucking cares? Yeah, newspapers were everything.
mhm, yeah,
Explanation 2 is a misidentification. The most popular candidates are the great horned owl and the great blue heron. And the great blue heron gets blamed for fucking everything. The
yep,
Mothman, everything. They both deserve some consideration. So both birds stand 4 to 5 feet tall in the right posture. Both leave 3-toed tracks. Both can be alarming when encountered unexpectedly in the dark. The sandhill crane has a call that sounds pretty prehistoric. It's a low rattling bugle that carries for miles, and it's alarmed people who knew what they were looking at. And the heron, when perched on a rooftop in the silhouette, can appear humanoid and bizarrely tall. And in poor light, a large bird moving through a gaslit street could plausibly be misread, at least initially. But 2 points. First, the main one is the light. What biological mechanism does a sandhill crane produce a directed, focused beam of intense light enough to illuminate a room from outside a window? Crane eyes can reflect ambient light, but reflection is passive. It requires an incoming light source, and it sends light diffusely outward, not in a directional beam. And the light described by every witness in this case was active. It moved, it scanned, and it was described specifically as coming from a horn protrusion out of the forehead, not from the eyes. So that kind of rules out the light reflection in the eyes of a crane or heron.
yeah. And like, where James and I are from, um, we see blue herons all the time. Like, they literally line the beach sometimes, like, just getting fish out of the shallows.
Mhm.
And even in the dark, you wouldn't be saying that that's an 8-foot tall pterodactyl
Right.
with a 30-foot wingspan. You
They
wouldn't
are
be saying
fairly
that.
small around here.
Yeah, and you won't be you won't have 5 witnesses saying that and then half a town saying that over a heron. So, I think that's just ridiculous.
Right. That was my thought exactly.
Yeah,
Is
you'd have to be intentionally, like, lying about the size of it at that point.
yeah.
Yeah,
I can like we've said, I can understand one person, maybe two,
yeah,
being confused about what they saw, but when the whole town is seeing it and there's multiple people who, if it is a heron or a bird that's local to that area, these guys, it's 1903. You've seen whatever's out there before.
yeah.
You know, these guys hunt, they do all sorts of things like that. And then we get into the ballistics angle. A heron weighs between 5 and 8 pounds. It is hollow boned, and a single shotgun round at close range doesn't wound a heron. It
Eviscerates it?
disintegrates it.
Yeah.
Yeah. There might be feathers and fragments, something identifiable on the ground, but this group of men fired what they compared to the destruction of the Spanish fleet. If there was a heron or a crane, there would be nothing left. So I think that rules out a misidentification, at least of that nature. The third explanation people come to, and I hear this on a lot of stories, is mass hysteria and social contagion. Once the town's professional leaders reported something, everyone's fear center activated. The subsequent witnesses were primed to see a monster. The odor was a coal gas pocket near the mine, which is a natural occurrence in a mining area. The lights were lanterns or reflections or imaginations supercharged by social contagion. The tracks were from birds or other local animals, reinterpreted through a lens of terror. The hysteria theory is compelling and it's intellectually rigorous, and it explains a lot of what happened in Van Meter. But it does run into a bit of a structural problem with the timeline. Griffith's sighting on night 1 is isolated. He's not been told a story. He's not been primed by another witness's account. He's not attended a community meeting where fear was spreading. He goes outside, he sees something, he tells people. So he would be the index case, the origin point of the story. If social contagion requires a seed to spread from, Griffith would be the seed. Now, that experience that he had, a focused white directed light that jumped cleanly between rooftops in a world where the most powerful artificial light available was a gas lamp, that would need its own explanation before hysteria can begin to work on the nights that follows. You'd have to explain what Griffith saw that he misinterpreted to explain what everyone else saw. If Griffith sees something shining a light at him, now this man is smart, he knows what's going on. He's not going to see a spotlight shining at him from a rooftop in a world that doesn't have spotlights. So if he's describing that, what did Griffith see that he explained to everyone that then would transmute and turn into what everyone else thought that they saw if they didn't actually see it?
He most likely saw an 8-foot tall pteranodon with a laser beam attached to his head. That's what I think.
I think you mean a freaking laser beam attached to his head.
Sorry, freaking laser beam
Frickin'
attached to
laser
its head.
beams. It's ill-tempered. Those are the three main logical explanations for what happened in Van Meter. And let's say, hypothetically, following the logic, the hoax explanation doesn't fully account for the named public unchallenged witnesses. The crane theory breaks down pretty easily. And the hysteria argument can be explained pretty easily as well. Personally, I think the mass hysteria of an entire town argument for a lot of things is a bullshit reason. Like, we had, where I live, someone said a lion escaped from the zoo, and maybe a dozen people were claiming they saw a lion in their backyard that turned out to be like, I don't know, like a fox or something. They were freaking out a little bit. But it's the only thing I could think that would be like a mass hysteria type thing. And most people we're sitting there thinking, like, you guys don't know what you're looking at. Like, there's not, like, one, a lion never even escaped from the zoo. And two, like, everyone's just like, I don't, like, you just want to see a lion.
Yeah.
So I think in this case with the mass hysteria, like, I don't think the entire town is going to buy into seeing a weird creature in the night. That's just,
Yeah. And also, like, with what you said about the escaped lion, like, it's out that there's an escaped lion. And then everyone's, "Oh, there's an escaped lion." They believe that fact. They believe that there's
Mhm.
an escaped lion. With Yuji, Griffith at the beginning, he said that he saw this strange light creature up above him, and the next day told people, and no one believed him. They're
Yeah.
just like, "Sure thing, yeah." And then the doctor saw it, and then he said he saw it, and then still lots of people didn't believe him. Like, people weren't believing this, which goes away from mass hysteria.
Right.
So, and
On the opposite side of that, it makes me think of your recent Leprechaun episode there, where people or like you were saying with something you saw there, there was a split second where you thought like something moved or you saw something, and there was a split second where you thought, oh, maybe a leprechaun before the reason
Mhm.
kicked in, but maybe that doesn't necessarily kick in for everyone. And once there's a newspaper article out, people could be thinking like, oh, there's some winged monster on the loose. Oh, there's the shape of a hare or something flying over. First thought could go to that instead of whatever local bird usually is there.
part that just bothers me about the possibility of, like, mass hysteria, seeing something they get confused with, is the light. The light at the time is otherworldly. That kind of light didn't exist back then. Literally, it's like a spotlight from, like, high beams of a car in a pioneer town.
It
You
definitely is the
know,
most inconvenient part of any excuse.
that's the thing, is that if you said it was just a pteranodon, it's like James, you probably don't know this, but Matt, the tombstone pterodactyl that was
Mhm.
allegedly shot in Arizona. Everyone talks about this pteranodon that attacked this town. Most likely a hoax. Um, but with this one, the description, we have better newspaper reports, we have better um, witnesses, and we have that strange light that just isn't a description in anything and doesn't make sense for the time.
And
You
then
know,
two, with James, when you were saying with the leprechaun, like the split second thought of what you might be seeing, these are prolonged, explicit encounters. It's
Yeah.
not like a split second thing and then they turn and it's gone. They're seeing prolonged events.
Business is booming, but you know what really helped? Zero, the accounting platform for small businesses. I used to think unpaid bills were just part of it. Ugh. But batch payments? Wow. Automated accounts payable? Even better. All in one place. That's a big one. And I can keep track from my phone while I get the job done. No bills in sight. What a life. Do right by yourself and your business and search XERO for your free trial. Conditions apply.
The first alternative theory is what I would call the subterranean species hypothesis. Van Meter was a deep mining town, and the surrounding hills were extensively excavated. There's tunnels going down and branching in ways that weren't fully mapped and connecting in some cases to natural cave systems that predate the mining operations by geological scales of time. The fringe argument is that the mining disturbed a relic species, something that had survived a very long time in the deep dark and adapted to the conditions that made it biologically unrecognizable on the surface. And it's actually a little more coherent than it might sound. If you live in total darkness for geological time, bioluminescence becomes your primary navigational tool and your communication system, your sensory apparatus, and potentially a defense mechanism. The horn itself is not supernatural in this model, it's just an organ that this creature has developed. It's a bioluminescent organ optimized for use in a lightless environment, the same way deep sea fish have evolved their own light sources, because the alternative is a permanent blindness in a world without sunlight. And if your environment is rock and high pressure and the need to deter large predators you can't see, maybe the exterior of something that developed under those conditions is not soft tissue. Maybe it's something denser. Something that 1903 era black powder rounds can't shoot through. So the morphological case is not nothing. There's leathery wings consistent with certain prehistoric anatomies rather than feathered birds. There's three-toed tracks consistent with documented fossil footprints. There's a crest or protrusion on the head, which can be seen in fossilized specimens. And there's a tendency toward cave dwelling in subterranean environments. And critically is the presence of a second, smaller creature on the final night. If there are two of them, one adult-sized and one smaller, that implies not a single bizarre anomaly, but it implies a breeding population. A breeding population implies not extinction, but survival somehow. Now, the obvious objection is the fossil record gives no reason to believe anything like that survived into the 20th century, and the absence of evidence is significant. But the counter-argument is that the absence of evidence in the fossil record is not the same as absence of evidence completely, especially for a creature apparently adapted to subterranean environments where fossilization is unlikely and observation by humans is minimal. The coelacanth was thought to be extinct for 65 million years.
Oh,
It
the
was found
coelacanth.
Yeah.
A coelacanth.
Uh,
Sorry, I was confused for a sec.
I
Sorry. Yeah,
remember.
coelacanth.
The fish, the
The
ancient
fish. The fish. The fish.
It was found alive in 1938. The giant squid wasn't photographed alive in its natural habitat until 2004. The okapi wasn't known to Western science until 1901, 2 years before Van Meter. Theory 2, and this one's a fun one, is the extraterrestrial or interdimensional model.
Let's go.
The Van Meter incidents happened in 1903. 6 years earlier, in 1896 and 1897, the western United States was swept by what researchers now call the Great Airship Wave. Hundreds of documented widespread sightings of metallic craft with powerful electric searchlights reported in newspapers from California to Nebraska. People reported encounters, lights in the sky, craft moving against the wind in ways no gas balloon technology of the era could explain. The Van Meter creature's horn-beam directed white scanning light is structurally similar to the airship searchlight descriptions that preceded it by less than a decade. Van Meter may belong to the same wave of high strangeness in the same geographic temporal cluster. The interdimensional version of this theory holds that the mineshaft itself was not a habitat, but a transit point. And James, you alluded to this in common tropes with things. An interface between our physical reality and something adjacent. That's not a hole in the ground where these things lived, but it was a door. And this framework explains the sudden manifestations and disappearances in a way that a biological animal can't. It explains apparent immunity to ballistic trauma. Matter from one dimensional context impacting matter from another just might not do anything, might not even interact with each other. It explains why the town saw them for 5 nights and never saw them again. The door or the portal was sealed, and whatever laid on the other side had no further access to Van Meter. The sound from inside the mine shaft after the creatures retreated, which was described as though Satan and a regiment of imps were coming forth, is read in this framework as the auditory signature of something closing, like a portal terminating. The group of men's rocks and planks was not really a futile gesture. They may have been exactly the correct response, not because they stopped it biologically, but because they interrupted the access point that the creatures had to our world.
Yeah, I love that one.
That one's my favorite.
I think the interdimensional theory has some credence, especially with the fact that the bullets did nothing. And you hear a lot about, like, if something's from a different dimensional plane maybe doesn't react to our physical realm the same as it would elsewhere. So perhaps that's why the bullets had no effect.
The only thing that gets me with that is kind of like the footprints that were allegedly left outside of the bank there,
Yeah, that's
because it
true.
would be interacting with the ground there.
Yeah,
But people claim Bigfoot might be interdimensional and it leaves footprints too.
yeah,
So
exactly.
I've heard.
So
He's
well,
heard
they
from me way
say.
too much.
Bigfoot's a touchy subject between Jake and I right now.
I brought him a case and I almost jumped over the table. uh, yeah, no, I definitely think the part that makes all these theories at least a little bit, they all have like a bit of potential for believability, even the skeptical ones, is because there's so many different aspects of the case that discredit another part of it. Like you'll say, "Oh, it's just a bird." Well, what was the light? Something like
Mhm.
that. Oh, you'll say it's interdimensional because the bullets don't hit it. Well, why did it leave footprints? There's so many things that make sense, and then another reason that doesn't. So that's why this one's so crazy to me.
And the final theory, and this one's real simple and short, is it was a surviving pterodactyl.
Mhm.
Short, sweet, to the point. The only thing with the pterodactyl is, did pterodactyls shoot hyper beams out of their foreheads? I don't think so,
I don't
but
think so.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I definitely can't say
So,
definitively.
Mhm.
so to me, I think my favorite explanation is the relic species that developed a bioluminescent type of sight.
Mm.
That's the thing that makes the most sense to me, especially because these caves connected to geologic caves that are so much older than we could ever understand.
Yeah.
And you don't know what's down there. There's species at the bottom of the ocean that we still have never seen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
100%.
so who's to say in a cave system there's not something similar?
Right.
It's ignorant to say that we know all of it, obviously. So,
Right.
yeah.
Was it that mine shaft? Was it ever reopened? Do you know,
Yeah, I was going to ask.
or unburied, or however you want to describe it?
Stand by. There's a few things this case doesn't have. It does not have the plaster cast. 122 years are gone by. The track replicas at the Van Meter Festival are reconstructed from descriptions. They are educational, they're not evidence. It does not have any biological material from the mine. And Jake, you mentioned this earlier. A 200-person posse fired what contemporary press described as a staggering volume of ammunition into two creatures at close range. In any scenario involving biological organisms, it should have produced some sort of physical trace: blood, tissue, feathers, scales, anything. No such material was collected, preserved, or analyzed. Or if it was there, no one thought to gather any of it, or there was nothing there to find. Now, that could argue these guys were like, well, fuck it, they're gone, and they didn't bother to gather any. And if it's biologic, it's going to disintegrate over time.
Yeah.
So, but there
It's
is no biological evidence of
it's
what it is.
1903. It's not like the DNA test kits.
Right.
Yeah. Also, they're threatened. I don't think they really care about finding out what it is. They just want it gone.
That,
So,
right.
yeah.
Now, it does not have a verified mine location. Van Meter's growth over more than a century has obscured or obliterated the landscape reference points that would let modern researchers identify that specific shaft. There is not a clear location, and without that, there's no possibility of a modern physical investigation into where it was.
And there was multiple shafts as well in the area,
Yes.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
so you can
Yeah.
find which exact one it would be.
Right. All we know, it was a shaft near the brickyard,
Mhm.
but for all we know, there could have been 10 shafts near the brickyard.
Yeah.
And over the course of the last 120 years, the town grows, they bulldoze, they pave over.
Yeah.
No one knows where it actually was. There is no federal record, there's no police report, no official documentation of any kind, just reports and newspaper articles. The counter argument is that 1903, rural Iowa had no real mechanism for officially documenting cryptid accounts, and there was no agency to receive a filing of cryptid accounts. But there is an absence of a paper trail outside of newspaper articles. And On top of that, the lore has grown. There's a 2013 book called The Van Meter Visitor by Chad Lewis, Kevin Lee Nelson, and Noah Voss. And it brought the case back to wide attention and provided the most comprehensive compilation of available historical documentation. It also, inevitably, renewed the story through a contemporary paranormal lens that has shaped subsequent retellings and evidence. Some accounts circulating now contain details of extended mine battles and military operations and official suppression, none of which are clearly supported by the 1903 newspaper record or records of any kind of what happened. They're not necessarily fabricated, but it's all been amplified and expanded on and exaggerated over time.
Right.
More than a century has passed since those 5 nights in 1903, but in the small town of Van Meter, the visitor never truly left. The legend has transformed from a whispered local terror into a point of community pride. Every year in late September, the town hosts the Van Meter Visitor Festival. It's a unique intersection of small town hospitality and high-strung paranormal intrigue. And they have a bunch of things that they do during this weekend. So they have paranormal presentations. You'll have experts discuss everything from the visitor's origins to cryptids like Bigfoot and the Mothman, all in the same thing. What I find really interesting and I would love to do is the 5 Nights of Terror walking tour. So it's a guided trek that takes you to the exact spots where the people, including the doctor, the banker, the hardware store owner, stood their ground and shot at this creature. So you can walk through the town and see exactly where they were standing when they saw it.
That's awesome.
They have a coal mine site, like exhibit. It brings you to the edge of the woods where the creature was last seen. Not to the exact mine, whatever, but just kind of gives you the vibe of what they did. And then, of course, there's food and vendors, and there's little trinkets and gifts and stuff that you can buy. You know, my favorite, not Van Meter, but I want to get the shirt that says, "The Mothman stole my catalytic converter."
Love that. My family runs a scrapyard business, so we all love stuff like
Nice.
that. The catalytic converter.
Here's where we land. The strongest argument against Van Meter is that a single local correspondent with a slow news week made up a story and wrote local names into a paper. But none of those witnesses or named people ever contradicted their names being in the paper. You have a mine that was boarded up, the creature never returned. You have 6 witnesses who all describe seeing the same thing, along with a group of 200 men who describe shooting at this creature, along with newspaper articles about it. And there's been relatively recent sightings of similar creatures in the general geographic area. James,
Yes.
the skeptic, what was the Van Meter visitor?
It was obviously, I'm still siding with the demon from hell.
That's my skeptic.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I honestly think it was like I said earlier, I think it was some sort of creature that was a deep cave dwelling creature that found its way out, had this weird bioluminescent thing, and then they boarded it up and it just never found another exit and went back down into the mines.
Yeah. Like my initial thought on that was to push back, but it's hard with the evolutionary shit, right? Because all of our examples are we have something and then we work out what it was for. It's different when we're kind of going the opposite way, like what could have evolved in this scenario. The opposite of everything we know, because like I say, you see something and then you just figure out what that evolutionary trait was for.
Yeah.
But I got no idea. In all honesty, I got no idea.
It's a weird one, right? Especially with
That
all
beam
these
really
reports.
fucks everything up.
It does. It does. That and the quality of witnesses messes everything up for you.
And it's not like one person saw the beam. They all saw the beam.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yep.
it's um so I'm of the belief that I think I would love it to be a subterranean cryptid. But the part that makes me feel weird about that is the wings.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
are
true.
there caves as that big that it would need wings?
You ever play Minecraft?
Well, that's true.
There are very large cra
This is a really big
Maybe
bat.
it's from Agartha.
There you go.
It's the whole underground world.
The reincarnation of Larry Bird. Or the pre-incarnation, actually, I should say.
Well,
Jesus.
that's a whole new theory, James. I think I lean more towards the interdimensional thing. The fact that, we've seen other pteranodon type cryptids throughout history, but we haven't seen any with like that big glowy ray coming off of it. To me, it
Mhm.
sounds just a little too otherworldly, and I think if this thing existed, it would be an interdimensional creature.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
I want it to be. I mean, I always want it to be the craziest explanation it can be.
The beam just seems like such a level up from bioluminescence. Because it takes,
Fair.
I mean, in terms of like lasers and flashlights, which we have today, it takes a lot more power to create a beam than it does to create a glow or something along those lines, right? So
Right.
it's hard for me personally to justify some sort of evolutionary trait becoming powerful enough to do some sort of beam.
That's fair.
yeah.
Fair.
No, fair enough. Yeah.
So I think it is safe to say that I have officially stumped the skeptic.
I don't know.
Well, Matt, if I could introduce something from our show. Normally, at the end of our episodes,
Mhm.
we rank it on a scale from 1 to 5. 1 being, I'm an idiot. 2, skeptical. 3, on the fence. 4, there's something strange. And 5, there was a laser beam pteranodon that attacked Van Meter, Iowa. James, what do you come down to today?
I'd say today I'm a 3.5.
Very
3.5
good. Fuck
over
yeah,
the
I'll
fence,
take it.
brother.
I will take it.
I'm
You did it.
I
something
will
weird
take it.
happened. Something
Yeah,
happened.
something weird
And
happened.
I don't know
Yeah.
what the fuck it was.
Yeah. I take that as a win.
Yeah.
I if it's over the fence, I say I at least made him think about it. So that's
There
awesome.
is it's not an easy enough one for me to just debunk and be like, yeah, no. I don't think so.
Mhm.
I'm so glad you switched to Van Meter.
Me too. Me too. Yeah. It's funny. I messaged Jake the other day. I'm like, yeah, by the end of the night, we're gonna have James thinking an Aerodactyl was shooting hyper beams in Iowa in 1903. I think we got most of the way there. I think
I
we got
think
most of
so.
the way there.
We got him thinking about it.
You did a good job presenting it. I mean I wouldn't say convinced, but I'm, you know, part of the way there for sure.
All right. I will take it. That's a win for me. I take that as a
Awesome.
win.
I think so.
All right, guys. So it's been 2 hours. I appreciate you coming on. It's been fun. I think I got a win tonight, so I'll take it. Tell everyone here where they can find you guys, listen to you guys, social medias, all that stuff, so everyone knows where to look for you guys.
You can find us for social media, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. We post all of our case photos on there and our updates if anything's happening with the podcast. For listening, you can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Amazon Music, and basically wherever you get your podcasts, you'll find us. Just search Dark Docent, you'll find us. We try to put out new episodes every Friday.
Awesome.
And there's also like shorts, reels, TikToks, whatever you want to call that form of video as well. You can find.
Perfect. All right, guys. So
Thank you so much for having us on. This has been really a good time.
Yeah, it
yeah,
was great meeting you,
thanks for
Matt.
coming. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for coming on. We'll have to do it again.
Perfect.
All
Sounds
right,
good.
guys. Have a
Awesome.
good night.
Thank you very much. Take care.
See you later.
Thanks. Later. Thank you guys so much for listening to this special episode with the guys from Dark Docent podcast. I had such a great time making this episode with Jake and James. I was going to do a different story, and at the last minute, I decided to switch to Van Meter because I thought it would be more fun to try and convince James of this one, and it turned out to be a great idea. I wanted to redo Van Meter for a while because it is episode 1, but the entire episode with intro and outro is a total of 17 minutes. And I felt like it needed to be done properly. And what better way to do that than having some guests on and really diving into it with other people involved too. So check out Jake and James, Dark Docent. They're on Instagram, they're on TikTok. Check out their podcast. They have a great show. It's fun every week listening to Jake try to convince James of some other crazy story or theory or cryptid or whatever. So make sure to check them out. Also, check out our show, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all at Paranormal Directive 13. Check out the Patreon, patreon.com/Paranormal Directive 13, where for just $5 a month, you can get a shout out on the show. So check out that. And then also remember to rate the show, share the show, leave a review, leave a comment if your app that you use allows. It's the best thing we can do to grow the show. We are trying to take this thing to another level, and the best way to do that is for you guys to help share it with as many people as possible. Thank you guys again, and remember, if you're ever driving through central Iowa on a dark October night, and you see a light on a rooftop that isn't a lantern, and you hear something between a gurgle and a shriek coming from somewhere above you, don't stop the car. Just keep driving.